Welcome, Janine, to the next set of our video series that is exclusively for the Speakable You community. Really excited to have you with us. Oh, I can't even get my words out today. So for those of you who don't know, Janine Garner is a thought leader in the space of looking at how we actually build network and connection, and also in really thinking about who we need in our world, which I think right now is really relevant. So Janine, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's wonderful to be here. Thank God you pressed record. Otherwise, we would still be nattering.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we were just talking about is that all of us are actually gone into service mode at the moment, which means all of this content production and podcast interviewing and video interviews like we're doing now. And it's sort of like we're coming up for air. And when we get to talk to someone we already know, we start going too far. So we've had to, for those of you now watching, we've had to wrap it up and make sure that we got focused on what we're here to do today. So Janine, I guess I wanted to start the conversation with, we've obviously, I don't think there's a single person who hasn't been impacted in these last 10 days. And for those of us who've had knowledge-based businesses with speaking as the core strategy to market, it's really been a dive off a cliff. So I just wanted to talk to you very briefly and start with, when was your moment of truth with this? Like everyone talks about there was impact and it's changed, it's been rapid, but when was your moment of truth that the world is going to be very different for a little while?
Well, it's quite interesting, Jackie, because I was starting to get some little niggles through some of my clients. So my speaker agent is Saxton, and we launched me as a brand into the US at the beginning of January. Loads and loads of response on the back of that. And literally the potential date of conferences started getting pushed out. So that was this first sort of, this is quite interesting. And then a lot of my corporate clients, so I also have a leadership development and training part of my business. And I work on either full days or longer term programs to develop leadership teams. And a lot of my corporate clients who had booked in to start, let's say March or April, suddenly they were starting to go, we might need to push this out. Travel from overseas had started to stop, and the CEOs were seriously considering putting a pause on domestic travel. And so it became obvious quite quickly that we were starting to enter a new era. A place of incredible unknowns, incredible complexity, and actually a place where all of us are being challenged to adapt more than ever before. Thankfully, none of my big clients have cancelled work. It's just been pushed into the second half of the year. But that in itself also has an impact because, you can't sell those days. No. And all of the travel that you had spread out is suddenly going to go whack into the second half. So I had to cancel a London conference, going to the US. I think there was a trip to New Zealand. So everything just got cancelled. But, it's the world that we're in now. And we've just got to try and work out how we pivot, how we actually make sure we come out the other side.
Absolutely. So just for context, obviously we've known each other for a while now, but can you explain to people what your business looked like pre-COVID? So, and how you built it and what an average sort of calendar looked like for you?
Yeah, so my background is I spent 20 years working corporately. I was most formerly Group Marketing Director of Oroton Group. So I looked after the fabulous brands of Ralph Lauren and Oroton and launched them, expanded them through Asia. Originally from the UK, but have a very solid corporate background of starting as a graduate trainee and working my way up. Probably, I think now it would be almost 10 years ago. I chose to leave that corporate organization and start a startup. So I launched what has become LBD Group. Initially, it was the Little Black Desk Group, really because I absolutely felt as a senior woman in business, this need to connect cerebrally, to have smart conversations, and to look for opportunities to collaborate and grow together. And over the last 8-9 years, that network has grown throughout Australia. We started testing it in London and Asia, and I sold that business in March last year. But what happened as I was growing that business, I was starting to get asked to speak about my journey as a female leader, my opinions, which can be quite strong, about what
Being on the other end of those opinions a couple of times.
yeah, what needs to happen. And what was really interesting, I remember one of my mentors, and many of you probably know him, Matt Church, in the early days. He was like, Janine, we need to get you launched on the speaker circuit. And I'm going, no, I'm building a business, go away. And he was very patient for a couple of years. And then I went, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get asked to speak. I need to actually start working out what I'm talking about, because it was very much just me talking from the heart. And over the last 5 years, I now have a professional speaking business. Saxtons Speaker Bureau, I'm my agent exclusively, and I speak internationally. I'm also an author, so I've got 2 best-selling books, and my 3rd book is coming out in June. I have my own mastermind mentoring group, because I am absolutely passionate about supporting other people's success. And I work developing training and workshop programs with organizations. So essentially, I'm a speaker, a mentor, an author, and an educator. And my passion really is about how do we unleash the brilliance of people. I believe everyone has brilliance in them. It's just that we bring a version of ourselves to our work or our life, and we're hiding all this brilliance, and essentially we're faking it till we make it, or we're trying to fit into boxes that we believe society has created for us. And my work is all about unlocking that brilliance and helping people to bring the best version of themselves to what it is that they do, so that they can learn to connect better, to collaborate better, to lead better. And only in that way can we create extraordinary success and results for each other. So that essentially is what I do. And I love it. I love it. How I got there, I've got no idea. I think
it just unfolded.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Hindsight is a wonderful thing. And, you know, we've known each other for quite a while. And it really is through reflection backwards where you start becoming aware of, oh my God, I've always been this person. I've always been passionate about helping the underdog, about helping. So whether it be women in business, whether it be the kid in the playground getting bullied, whether it be the small business owner, whether it be, you know, fighting at corporate level for the team that are being bullied, I've always been passionate about standing up for the underdog. And what that has now turned into is a bigger, more universal view of going, oh my God, there are so many people living a small version of their lives. And if I can just unlock 1 or 2 of those to step into the amazingness that is them and connect with the right people and have the right support and do awesome work together, then surely that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. There's just a couple of things I'd love to touch on there very quickly. So one is, for those people who are watching this, is that yes, Saxtons are your agency, you are exclusive, but they did help you launch your brand into the US in January. I think what's key for everybody to understand, I want to contextualize your experience, is that they chose you as one of 12 for their own launch. So you were part of 12 people?
Yeah, I think 10. Yeah.
So that you were part of the initial showcase that they actually used to launch the Saxton brand into the US, which is quite extraordinary. And so, you know, that is the result of long-term work. That is not something that somebody can go out and do straight away. You've actually really built the muscle. The second thing in that is actually talking to, you know, we can hear a lot of people say that I want to unlock brilliance, I want to unleash brilliance, I want everyone to be the best versions of themselves. And I would ask that anybody actually watching this, go and grab your books, especially the second one, because it's who you know, because that your work is so practical. So a lot of people talk this stuff, but you actually give stuff away to people that they can go away and use and really, really work out how to do that. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you as part of this series. The third thing, which I want to shift to and then use that to sort of move into the next bit, is you talked about in reflection, I realized that I'm always this person. And I think that's something that we need to touch on and remember during this period. You know, so there's a few things that, you know, so what has changed for you in your world is obviously speaking engagements have changed, conferences have moved, corporate contracts have moved. So that is definitely what has changed, but what has stayed the same? Like we're all talking about what's changed and it's chaos and everything else, but what has stayed the same for you?
Well, I think I want to answer that by responding to your 3 points.
Yeah.
Because what has stayed the same is the way I operate, which has resulted in those 3 points. So the launching into the US piece, what's really interesting is this stuff doesn't happen overnight. So when I first started speaking, lots and lots of free stuff, but very consistently approaching it in my way. I've realized that I am very high touch. I love high touch. I love getting to know my clients. I follow through. I'm the sort of person that stays around after a conference because I'm so engaged and wanting to serve people, and that has never changed. And so with Saxton, I have equally, over the many years that I've been trying to get in there, been managing that type of relationship. And even now with the CEO, I'm picking up the phone, I'm going, hey, you okay? Is there anything you need me to do? I've thought about, how about I turn this content in a webinar? Would that help you in terms of selling into clients? So it's this relationship piece, which is such a fundamental part of how I am and how I operate and how I build strategic partnerships, that enabled that Sexton thing to happen and now continue to leverage, but at the same time has allowed me to build long relationships with clients. So it takes I'm always a long-term, I play the long game.
Yeah.
So I'm a massive believer in, if we choose to play the long game and we are really clear on what our ultimate destination is, then we will make the right decisions along the way, and we have to trust that we're getting there. The people that hustle, that react, that almost drop their pants if somebody asks, that just go in and hardcore sell and it's all about now, I think those are the ones that are going to suffer right now, to be honest. With the book, again, the thing that's never changed for me, and you'll know this from how we've worked together, I'm a massive believer in getting shit done. That anyone that does work with me knows that the good thing about me is I care. The bad thing about me is I care. So I'm
I'll hold it up here.
But I think that comes from, when I look back over my corporate career, I've always been big picture thinker. And one of Matt Church actually said to me, you know, one of your awesome magic powers, Janine, is you're able to join dots that other people can't see. So I can see where Jackie wants to go, where Janine wants to go, where whoever wants to go. And I'm really good at taking the steps, the right steps at the right time in the right cadence to ultimately get there. So what I learned through my corporate career, having bought speakers and trainers, the thing that used to annoy the bejesus out of me would be I'd fork out cash for training and development, and my team would come back inspired, but then nothing would change. And I think this is one of these fundamental shifts. So I haven't changed in that. If you ever get the chance to hear me speak, I'm very much about, part of my commitment is when I leave the room, I want people to be able to have the skills and the tools to do something with it, to go back into work and make something happen. So that's with both my books I've written in that way. And the third book, which I'm looking there because I've got a picture of the cover on my notice board, actually talks about the 4 laws of brilliance and has tips and tools and insight as to how people can work on themselves to bring their best selves to work. And I think what we're seeing changing, to answer that part of your question, is many people are a little bit over just the inspiration stuff. And I heard this directly from the US. You know, one of the things was, oh my God, you're so funny, we love you. But it was this, it's so nice to have a level of practicality and realness and real story. And I think we are seeing this movement from almost just inspire and fill me up to actually, I want to personally develop, I want to change, I want to do things, and people being prepared to invest in that. And I think that ties up with both of them when you talked about the practicality piece. I think it's such an important piece where we cannot just go out and blast information out there no longer. It's about, how do I now put this into context for me? How do I do something with it? How can I use this? And if there's one thing that they take from your delivery or your keynote, your job is done. Not just, yeah, she was great or he was great. It's not about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people, like, you know, we're both big believers in the value of speaking to elevate your career and give you that visibility piece. A lot of people that will be watching this are actually, you know, at the starting blocks, and a lot of them I've spoken about already have been a little bit more shaken than perhaps the rest of us, and because it's already something that you know that exists, you know that it will come back. But for somebody who is just creating their identity in this space, it's a little bit uneasy and a little bit uneven. What would be your biggest piece of advice to them during this period?
Well, first of all, I feel for you, and do not be afraid to be fearful at the moment, because it is tough. And if it is something you want to do, do not stray off the course. It just might take a little bit longer. The reality is, even those of us that get paid to speak are now delivering content for free. So today I was doing a virtual conference at no price, but the audience was right. So if they're getting our level of speakers for free or to run webinars, they're of course going to go there first before those just starting out. So my message is, it's okay to feel like that, but don't give up. The second thing is, I think now more than ever, the importance for you individually to build your positioning is key. So positioning is really hard. Like, loads of people talk about it. I know you're passionate about it too, Jackie, but what does positioning actually mean? Positioning is about consistently, frequently, often, regularly sharing your thoughts in line with what it is that you stand for. There are too many people that literally jump in and out of bed of thought process, that suddenly think they should be over here. You know, one minute they're talking about, I don't know, business growth, and the next minute they're talking about health and well-being. It's like, I often say to people, it's like going into a supermarket, and if suddenly there is an iceberg lettuce in the middle of a fixture full of Coca-Cola, you're going to go, oh gosh, what's that all about? And that's what so many people starting out do. So the only reason I know that now I'm getting calls in, that people are reaching out without me marketing, that I get paid for what I do, is because over the last few years, I have been so consistent in my messaging. And if you look back, sorry, I've got props, not intentional, but
no, props are good. Props are good.
So when I first started out, if you imagine, I came out of corporate, very senior corporate executive. My whole thinking was around, we need teams to work together. And that's essentially where the first book came from me to we. If you look back for 2 years, all I talked about was collaboration, 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 collaboration. I will only talk about collaboration. I'll only PR on collaboration. My newsletters, all about collaboration. What I then realized within this was, actually, part of collaborating is, how do we work together? How do we get the right people around us? And it's not just about forcing people together. And without networks, we can't do anything. And so this is when book number 2 came out. Again, has probably been 2 to 3 years of networking, connecting. And even now, so even in the US, we launched with this, and this is like 2 years on. So think of it like an album. Imagine I channel Pink. You know, Pink doesn't launch an album and suddenly she's off doing something else. She then launches a single, and then there's merchandise, and then there's a tour, and then there's all that sort of stuff. What I've now realized, and this is where this whole journey that we're all on is one of a journey, because as you grow, your thought leadership kicks off. What I've realized now is that we can't collaborate in the right way or network in the right way until we actually learn to connect with ourselves. Because otherwise you're just faking it till we make it. So now, excuse me 1 second while I get my so a preview, because no one's seen this.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh,
number 3 is all about,
looking forward to this.
Is all about Be Brilliant, How to Lead a Life of Influence. So over the last 8 years, these all now stick together, because connect with yourself, connect with others, work together.
Yeah.
If you'd have asked me 8 years ago, I wouldn't have even joined those dots necessarily. So
But
my
evolution came because you did stick to something. You didn't, you went, this is my thing. Because one of the things as well that I'm starting to have conversations with people about is, don't worry about, is this the right thing? Just take a thing, because you don't know where it's going to evolve to unless you start. If you don't start and you don't stay loyal to something, then you can't become known for something.
And I often say to clients that I work with, what is the thing that people ask you to catch up for a coffee with, to talk about?
Great insight.
So that is, if people are, what are they asking you? Are they asking you how you market your brand? Are they asking you, oh, how do you stay so healthy? Are they asking you, how did you manage to pivot from X to Y? Are they asking you, how did you restart your career? Or how come you're awesome at leading teams? Like, they are giving you the clues. And that is where you start with your thinking. You know it already. It's just that often I often say we go to, if we're not careful, we go to market with the massive legacy thing that we want to be remembered for, and nobody cares.
No, it's so true.
And you're going to bring it back and build people to that. So it's an element of pick a lane, and the lane that you're known for. Consistently position yourself in that place. And just be patient. Just this commercial patience piece is so key.
Yeah, and that's really key as well. I say, you know, where do you have the right to speak to this when we're talking about the speaker training? Like, forget about what people are telling you should speak about. Where do you have the right to speak to this? And what is it that people seek you out for? So, for example, in the last workshop, we had this incredible woman, and I know she'll probably be watching this, but we had this incredible woman coming in who was doing phenomenal stuff for helping accounting practice owners, like really sexy, cutting edge stuff, right? And stuff that shouldn't be revolutionary, but is. And she's really rapidly scaling that well into the last couple of weeks, but now she's pivoting it a little. And she has also an incredible personal transformation journey. So, you know, being at the very top of her game as a partner in firms, but actually an alcoholic, and has fought those demons and won. And so she came into our training and my workshops to build number two, because people were telling her all the time, everyone needs to hear it. And I actually said to her as we went through the process, I said, look, I get that. And I get that it's a great story, but this is your genius. This is actually what people seek you out for. This is where you're making an impact in the world. That you can be inspirational. That's not going to last your whole life. That's not going to be your career legacy play. This one, and it was really interesting, because when we put it up there, we put it in the context of what do you have the right to speak on? She actually had the right to speak on both, because she had lived experience on that one and deep expertise on the one. But it was about, what are people seeking you out for?
Yeah.
And so, and I actually hadn't articulated that clearly. So I think in this period when we're going to be in lockdown, so to speak, I think people should actually reflect on what is it that I'm hearing. And you actually just ran that exercise with me, and I have to be very honest. You know, it's when people do love what I do. I've built a business out of it. But where people light up is when they're asking me stuff on, you know, that ability to, you know, I've hit a wall, I've hit a crisis. What do I do with this? Is that ability to pivot? Is that ability to message? Is that ability to find opportunities where people say that there aren't any? And so that has been your questions to me around that. We're really, really changed my perspective on how we do position. And I think in this period, if people just do that, would be really powerful for them. And then also stay there. Like when you said stay in your lane, you know, I do have some people who want to get some media. I've got some clients getting great media, and they've got great work, but they don't know how to stay on message, because they want to be seen to be all powerful and all knowledgeable. So they keep going off that single message. Would you agree that that's not useful for anyone?
It's not useful, because you are always ahead of your market.
Yeah.
And the market takes, and when I talk market, I'm talking clients, and whether you've got corporate clients or public clients, or whether it's people within your industry. You know, my background's marketing, so there's a whole heap of history of marketing that feeds this conversation. What I do know to be true is that your market will never catch up to you at the pace at which you're going. And so it takes a while to catch up. So you may go, and I can still remember going, are you kidding me? Do people still want me to write another article? And you just got to go with it, because it's new stuff for other people to hear. And the more you consistently say the same thing, it's what you get known for. It's, you only have to look at the Oprahs of this world, you know, incredible speakers. I'm just trying to think, like the Jason Foxes of this world, and Matt Churches of this world. Who else is there? You know, people that you just know what they're going to talk about, and that's what they then human beings love certainty.
Yeah.
And anything that feels off kilter, they just go, oh, this doesn't feel right. Unconsciously they go, oh, this doesn't feel right. And I think we talked about this before we went live. One of the things I would encourage you to do is, yes, keep in that lane and be really careful, because when we are all put under the pump financially, we're worrying and anxious about what the future looks like. The risk is we say yes to everything.
Absolutely.
And you go, yeah, I can talk about that. Yeah, you may be able to. But as you said, Jackie, is that where your area of expertise is? Do not dilute your message. Do not try and be all things to all people. Do not try and go out there and talk about yoga just because that's what you do in your spare time and actually you're an expert in IT. You know, just stay in that lane, because it won't serve you any purpose in the long run.
And whilst we have this overwhelming sense that, you know, this is chaos and this is terrible, we also know from change, and I had a lot of conversation the last few days about, you know, I've got a mining services background. We quite often had our whole industry fall off the edge of a cliff without warning, you know, apparently without warning. My ex-husband and I owned travel agencies when 9/11 hit. I was a director in a recruitment company when the GFC hit. Like, we go into these chaotic environments thinking, oh my God, the world has changed. But in actual point of fact, over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we'll keep bouncing along the bottom, but that bounce will start to turn into a bit of a rhythm. And once we can get that little bit of a rhythm, then over a few months from that, life will return pretty much to normal. And it may be different, absolutely, but we will have acclimatized and it'll be our new normal. We won't question that it's different to what it was. And if we go off course now, we actually can't. It's like being in a rowboat. Like, if you start going off course like that, it takes you a lot longer to get back, because you're going against the current. And so I think that's really important. And I was chatting to you before we went live at the Professional Speakers Convention in Adelaide, which I think was the last in-person convention to sneak through before we went into lockdown. It was really interesting. So Michael McQueen, like all speakers, lost hundreds of engagements in a 24-hour period. And one of the things he said from the panel, because they changed one of the sections to be, you know, let's go into real time and let's discuss what we can do. And one of the things that he said that was really stuck out was, if it's not a decision you would have made 6 weeks ago, don't make it now. So he said, you know, if you've been saying for 5 years, I need to get my content online, then do that. But if you're doing it just because you think it's what you need to do, he said, don't do it. And he said, and also take yourself out to this time next year and make sure that if you look back in retrospect, that you would still be happy with the decision that you're making right now. And I think that was a really good equalizer to think about, because we've got to stay, those that'll come out best are those who are, as you said, serving now, like speakers who are speaking for free where they normally wouldn't, things like that. Those people who are serving now will come out of this, but it's not just those who serve, it's those who stay true to who they are.
Absolutely. I think there's a real need for calm and patience. And it's easy when you don't have a bill to pay or a bit, you know, I get that. But conceptually, I think all of us, and it's a self-leadership skill of how do you, in moments of chaos where everything around seems to be just reactive and it's almost like you're in the middle of this crazy whirlwind of stuff, how do you have an ability to actually gain a perspective and look in and actually ask the questions that need to be asked, get curious about, if I were to find these answers, would that give me the game-changing opportunity? And I think those people that are able to just slow down a little bit and to look around on the outside are the ones that are going to stay the course, because the opportunities are there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely there. It's just we've got to think smartly. We've got to ask the real questions, so that we can actually, I said to some of my clients, I said, look after the clients you've got. Look after your clients that you've got. Call them up. Ask them questions. Where are their real pain points? What are they really struggling with right now? And then own your expertise. Sit comfortably in what it is that you know and get curious about, how can my expertise help solve their problem? And there's the opportunity. There is, okay, you know what? Why don't I put on a webinar for you? Why don't I run this for you? Why don't I create some content for you? Not just listen to them panicking and then go and respond. That's the service piece. That is the respectful service piece.
So for those people who are who were starting to really invest heavily in building this craft of speaking,
Yep.
what would you say to them? What can they go and teach themselves or invest in and do just from the comfort of their own home? What would you actually be directing people to do in this sort of, most people have a little bit of downtime. So if they're wanting to actually improve the craft of speaking, what would you recommend they do?
Go and study.
Yeah.
Go and study. So there's no excuse right now. Literally watch speakers. Look at what the most watched TED Talk speakers are doing, and don't just watch them and write notes. Ooh, I'm inspired by that. Actually study them. Write down. Like when I was in San Francisco in January, I was fortunate enough to share the stage with Simon Sinek, and he was launching his new book, The Infinite Game. All I wanted to do was just sit there and go, oh. But actually, in here, I carry these moleskins because I love them. I literally studied his speech. And as I go, opens with story, led to point one. I could tell you the structure of his speech. Mentioned point 1, 2, 3, 4. He told a story. And I literally break down the speech. And you can do that watching amazing speakers on TED Talks, or look at my videos. I don't care. Look at what their style is. So some people are really funny and they use humor, and how do they use humor, and other people are just incredible storytellers. And one of the things I've been told, this is a bit of a funny story. Someone gave me some advice to go and study humor, Janine. Go and put more humor in your keynote. And I struggle, being from the north of England and English. Humor is actually quite hard, or the humor that I thought. So anyway, I engaged a comedian to write me some jokes. Oh my God, they were awful. Even I didn't laugh at them. They were terrible. And what I've subsequently learned is that the more I'm just comfortable in my own skin, my natural humor is taking the mickey out of myself, and I'm quite physical with my humor. So I often share the stage with Kieran Flanagan, who is an incredibly, like Marianne, our mutual friend Maz, very humorous, very big, very funny. And I go, God, I'd love to be like that. But my humor is I'm quite physical. So you'll often see me on stage acting stuff out or being silly. I don't know I'm doing it. It's just my natural style. So actually right now, sitting in front of a computer screen is really tricky for me, because normally I'm sort of running around and jumping and being silly.
I've seen you on stage, yeah.
But it's almost like you've got to study all these different techniques that people use and understand why you engage with them. It's not about you being the same. It's about you finding, my point here is find your natural style. There absolutely is a series of preferred frameworks, or better frameworks to craft your speech around, but the ability to turn your keynote into an experience that people remember actually comes down to you bringing your uniqueness to your delivery.
Absolutely.
So I would be studying what other speakers are doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So when it's quite funny that you say about the humor bit, because I say to people, I have a mantra of people will say, I know I need to get better at speaking, or I want to improve my speaking, I want to be a professional speaker. And they'll say, and I know I need to be funny. And I always say, are you funny in real life? And look at me, they go, what? I'm like, because if you're not funny in real life and you write to be funny on a stage, it will not work. Right? There's natural humor and there's insight and there's all these other things that you may want to be before you're funny. But it really brings, because I just say, well, are you funny in real life? Because if you're not, it won't translate to the stage. The other thing with that is the clients that I work with, we actually have a thing called the YouTube exercise. And so it is, if you're going to start working with me, you actually have to go and watch 3 speakers 3 times each. And the first time is you do what you said, like all the things that you notice, all the things that you love about what they do. The second time you watch it, you actually have to note down all the things that irritate you. So even if you love a Simon Sinek or a Brené Brown, actually be critical, because that flips them out of fandom and into actually really critiquing what's going on. And then the third time is actually to take note of the phraseology and the words that you love that they use, because that gives you insight into your language style. And so we do that quite frequently. So it's one of those things, but I'm the same as you. Like I have notebooks and notebooks, and I can't remember the last time I just went and listened to someone speak.
I know.
It's like I become this sociologist with speakers.
I know, it's totally ruined it for me. It's terrible.
Yeah.
The other thing I would do too, if you found your lane, study your lane.
Yeah.
So every single one of us has something relevant to say.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it that you have something relevant to say. The ability to build a speaking career means that you've got to actually do the work. Yes, learning the technique, but also what you have to thoroughly know your area of subject matter expertise, or you know your story inside out, but you've got to be thorough. You've got to be able to speak fluently and fluidly around your area of expertise, which means you've got to study. You have to study, whether it be resilience, networking, leadership, collaboration, whatever it may be. You've got to know your stuff.
Yeah.
And be prepared to be challenged on what you know. So think and study outside your world, because if you can get thorough, you'll start being asked, you'll start being paid for what it is that you do.
Yeah.
And then the artistry piece comes in you becoming elegant in your delivery. And then ultimately your uniqueness is what we're all aiming for. So you're remembered for you, not necessarily what you say. People go, God, I want Janine on stage today. I want Jackie on stage today. They're asking for you, and that's because of your uniqueness. And because you've done all your research and you know everything, you can, I call it, you dance around your subject. You know, you can pull on the story, the detail, the humor, depending on the audience. You go, I was talking to a speaker friend of mine the other day, and there's this wonderful journey. And I've been speaking for 8 years. So put that into context. And this was, I call that like my post-corporate speaking career, because in corporate we learn to report and speak. But it's actually only in the last, I reckon, 12 to 18 months, if I'm really honest, where I will get on stage and I come off and I have no idea what I've said.
Yeah. And that is actually, so long as your audience is responding, that is actually when you know that you know your stuff. Like, you know, and it's not about that you're making it up, and it's not about, it's just so consistent and so inherent. That is actually where I believe, and I do that in some of my subject matter areas now, but that is when you know that you've got it, because, you know, it just comes through. It's the same when I'm training people. I know that you're the same when you're actually coaching and mentoring people. It just comes through because you know what's needed. You know, and it's interesting what you say about really knowing your stuff. And I'm going to have to wrap this up really soon. It's been a great conversation, but Frederick Harron, who's a professional speaker out of Europe, I think he's now based in Singapore, but he did an incredible education session for us at the Global Speakers Federation, the last one, that summit. And what he talked about, though, was when he went to pivot content. So the same as you, he stayed pretty well on track, but pivots it every few years. Yeah. And he said he will go away, and around the world, he will interview 150 plus people, and not just people in the area, people who are opposed to the area, people who are anti the area, people in government, people in private, people in public. So he gets this really broad picture, and he pressure tests his own thinking. Then the best of that goes into the book, and the best of that goes into the new keynote. But the other thing he said, the biggest benefit that he didn't realize before the first time he used that process was whenever he was presenting, he could just like talk about, well, when I was speaking to the Minister for Women in Ethiopia, and you're like, what, there's a Minister for Women in Ethiopia? Like, so the inherent credibility that came just because he went so deep. And that is the ultimate process, I believe. And that's very much what you've done with your iterations. And so I want people to understand that there is always going to be a starting point where we just get out what you know to be true, but then you have to go deep and you have to stay in your lane.
Support that 100%. So if you look at when my podcast started, so I've got a podcast called Unleashing Brilliance, and I think I probably started that maybe 2.5 years ago. And it started off with the concept of, I really feel like there's more to leadership, like what makes people lead really well. And around the world, if you look at it, people from all walks of life, different industries, small players, big players, asking them questions, trying to get to the depth of their story. What was really interesting through that is I was starting to create this IP around, this is really interesting, because every little bit of learning at the moment is all very shallow of literally leadership skill capability. Yeah. But without leading yourself, you cannot do any of that stuff. No. And all that research eventually has become this. Yeah. Which is the same title as the podcast that started 2 years ago. And I didn't realize that's what it did. But literally you start something, you go, this is really interesting. I'm going to start trying to codify this learning. I'm going to, then within this book particularly, I've used a lot of my own personal story backed up with story and research from around the world. So what I'm moving to next is turning this now into a keynote. So exactly what you've just talked about of how do you get the depth of knowledge? Because that's what makes you unique. That's what allows the elegance of the delivery.
Absolutely.
So you have a relevant message, but it's up to you to put in the work and the efforts. There, you're doing your own PhD on your area of expertise, and that's how I think you start building up presence in the speaker world. And you can do it now. Write about what you think, share posts about what you think, comment only in your live. So don't go commenting on something on LinkedIn that is off kilter.
And we see that a lot. So just to wrap up in summary, the things that people can be doing right now is reflecting what people ask them to have a coffee about. Where do they seek out your advice when it's just a coffee or a catch up? The second thing is actually study the speakers. We've got unlimited access to all of the speakers. Troy and Zara in their interview this morning also talked about Jerry Seinfeld's documentary about script writing on Netflix. So there's all these resources that we can go to. So study the speakers. And then the third thing is actually go deep on your lane, not just on the craft of speaking. Would that be right?
Absolutely. You summed it up perfectly.
Fantastic. Okay, Janine, I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I really, like normal, I never want our conversations to end, but I am going to have to wrap it up right there. And thank you so much for your time. And we will see you later. Now, for everybody watching this from home, Janine's contact details will be in the comments below the post. And then we're going to regroup tomorrow and get together and talk about what we've taken out of this and what we're doing as a result.
Perfect. Take care, everyone. Keep safe.
Thanks, Janine. Bye.